Hey everyone, it's Atlas. In this video, I'm going to be explaining some important mechanical tricks that myself and other high MMR players use all the time. I'm going to be touching on a lot of different concepts, from aim, movement, and some aspects of game knowledge. Without further ado, let's get into it. So the first trick I'm going to be showing you is how you can use the movement from heavy melee to your advantage in many circumstances. In my opinion, the most practical way you can use this would be to make it safer for you to secure last hits. The way you do this is basically by starting your melee from behind cover, where you're protected, and then using the dash movement to quickly hit the minion without exposing yourself too much to your opponent. And here I'll show you a visual example. So let's say I want to go for that minion, but I don't want to end up peeking my opponent and expose myself to getting poked down. I'll just charge it around this, move it around, and I was barely exposed for a second. The most they could do is get maybe one shot on me. And that's how a lot of pros are able to secure CSs with melees without, really coming into much risk. Another way you can use this movement is to dodge parries. How you do this is by charging the melee, and instead of hitting your target, you can do a complete 180 intentionally missing. I'll show you an example right here. As you can see, if this dummy were to try to parry me, their parry would go on cooldown, and I'd be able to just free melee them since they can no longer parry me. Finally, you can also use heavy melee as a way to get to hard to reach places combined with a wall jump. This technique is very useful for getting on the bridge in lane without using a stamina point, and by saving the stamina point, you can escape much easier if necessary. Here's a visual example of how to do this. You walk up to the wall, W, press S to wall jump, and then you're up, just like that. The second trick I'm going to go over in this video is to always prioritize aiming to the right side of your screen in Deadlock. And the reason why you would do this is because the bullets you fire are actually projectiles that are fired from your character model. They do not come from the center of your screen where your crosshair is. What this means is that it is much more forgiving for you to aim on the right compared to the left, since the path of the projectile will pass through any targets between your player model and your crosshair. It's easier to explain this visually with an example. So I walk up to the minion here, and you can see if I'm aiming to the left, it's not going to hit him at all. Maybe a little bit as I drag it closer. Meanwhile, aiming to the right, I get, as I reload here, I can literally aim a country mile from this guy. It does become less useful the farther away you are. However, there is still always a slight bias on the right, because you're basically, the way bullets work in this game is they're drawing a line from your model to the crosshair. So as you can see, I'm a little bit on the right. I'm not quite on him, and it's still hitting. Meanwhile, on the left, around the same distance as the right, it's not going to hit because it's just going effectively straight. The next tip I have will make it much easier for you to land parries, and that is to use the sound cue of heavy melee to determine when to press parry. So the time for this is as soon as the sound of heavy melee charging starts to taper off. I'll show you an example. As you can see, it plays that little quick charge sound, and as soon as it starts to taper off, that is when you want to press parry. If you want to practice getting a feel for this sound cue, I would use this bot and just close your eyes and try and hit the parry only using sound. This is a very useful thing to learn, since once you get this down muscle memory wise, you'll be able to parry people mailing from behind bales, cover, or anywhere where you can't use sight to gauge when to parry. If you found these first 3 tips helpful, I would greatly appreciate it if you could subscribe and like the video, since it really helps boost it in the algorithm and build my channel up. Moving on, I have a concept that you've probably heard of if you've played other shooter games, but I haven't heard anyone specifically talk about this in context to Deadlock, and that is crosshair placement. There's a couple ways we can use crosshair placement to our advantage in Deadlock. The first way is fairly obvious, but that's just to always focus on keeping your crosshair at head level, since, double damage is very nice, and it will help you a lot in lane. Just making it easier to hit headshots in lane is going to be a great way to help increase your kill potential, especially on characters that rely on good damage, such as Vindicta, Geist is another one, and even Infernus, building up the burn. The second way to use crosshair placement in Deadlock is a lot more game specific, and this trick is to actually set up our crosshair where the orbs will fly up after the minions die in the laning phase. This is super important because we want any advantage we can when it comes to securing or denying souls, and if we have to move our crosshair less than our opponent, odds are we're going to outfarm them easily. So the way you would do this is every time you kill a minion, you want to be moving your mouse a little bit up, since most of the time the orb is going to fly up after you kill the minion. And if you're trying to deny another minion, like let's say some enemy just killed this little friendly minion here, I can pre-aim my cursor right above it, and I should have a little bit of an advantage when it comes to getting the orb that pops up after it explodes. You can see here, I pre-aim and I can get it really quickly because all I have to do is one little micro flick and I have it pretty much instant. The final piece of advice I'm going to go over in this video isn't exactly mechanical, but it is a super useful application of game knowledge you can use to get more denies and secures in lane. So every character in Deadlock's weapon has some sort of travel time, which means it takes more time for shots to reach when you are farther away from a target. So what this means in context of securing and denying souls is that if you are closer to the target, that means you will have an easier time securing the soul, since your bullets will have naturally less travel time. It also makes it easier for you to hit the shot since it's closer to you on your screen and you just naturally have a bigger target because that's how perspective works. Here I'm going to give you a comparison of farming souls at close range, and then after that I'll show you what it looks like when I'm farming souls at long range. So obviously that one's not going to count because I already spawned. But as you can see, I'm going to be able to reliably get these souls at under 200 milliseconds, since I don't really have much bullet travel time at this range. And it isn't close enough for me to be able to melee it, which is where this technique will really come to effect. And here is a comparison of what it's like from long range. Like, let's say you're farming from your Guardian and into the middle of a lane. I would say this is about the right range for it. And as you can see, I'm starting off. Now, all of a sudden, really the fastest I should be able to get is around 150 milliseconds. And you may even see me miss a few shots since, you know, it is farther away and it's a pretty small target, so you may occasionally miss, although it is slow moving. But yeah, you can see instead of getting the 130s to 150s occasionally, I'm getting around 300 to 260 milliseconds. And that is a very significant difference in how fast I can get souls. Alright guys, that's it for today's video. If you have any suggestions for videos you would like me to make sure to put them in the comments. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe and like the video because it helps me a lot. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one.